All right, everybody. For me, this is a special opportunity. Let's put it that way. When I say special opportunity, um, for those of y'all that are watching this video and that know who Coach Randy McDougald is, you're probably watching this as intense as I'm asking the questions. You want to know a lot more about him, and you also want to hear some of the things that he has to say, for the simple fact of he's one of the most well-respected coaches that I've ever been around, and he's very well known in the state of Texas, especially for being one of the winningest coaches of the 90s in the state of Texas in high school football. High school football in the state of Texas is just different than the other 49 states. Don't get me wrong, California and Florida have great football, but Texas is on a whole nother level. On Friday nights in the state of Texas, everybody shuts down, and they all shut down on these little restaurants, and they shut down at their little general stores, and they shut down from 1A to 5A. If they're in that school district, they go to watch their football team of their town try to destroy the other town. It's basically what it is. It's one of the greatest things you'll ever see. There's moms as big as you can see. There's the flowers are crossing their chest and hanging to the ground, and the guys have their wrists, moms or whatever you call those things. I never knew. I was on the football field, so I didn't really have to care much about those. But it is absolutely one of the biggest things in the state of Texas, high school football. And I am really, really glad to be sitting here with a former Texas high school coach, Randy McDougald.
Traveling down the rapids, don't know what's around the bend. You ain't slept in 3 days straight, but you're pushing against the wind. Gotta find a place to stay tonight, but it's hard when there's no help. You can't turn around, but it's alright, cause you did this to yourself. There's better days coming, but when I don't know. Now feels like a hard time, but it's all part of the show. So pick yourself up, rearrange, know that only you can change yesterday's tomorrow's cousin. There's better days coming.
Coach, how are you doing?
Doing great, man. I really appreciate you coming out, James.
Yes, sir. Coach Randy was 23 years as a head football coach, 1984 to 2006. Sound about right, Coach?
About right.
165 wins, 75 losses, and 4 ties. That's a 68% winning record. That's pretty legit in Texas high school football. He was with Conroe Oak Ridge from 84 to 89. And from 1990 to 2006, he was with the Iola Bulldogs. And during that time with the Iola Bulldogs, he amassed a 136, 49, and 2 record, a 73% winning percentage. And during the 1990s, it was 90 and 19 and 1, which is an 82% winning percentage. And which in Texas State football, Coach, that's amazing. That's really, really good.
It was a good run of kids.
Some of the questions I'm gonna run through here with you, and you answer them the way you want to, Coach. I won't stop you from answering them as long as you want to, as short as you want to. It's up to you. We're not on a time frame, and we'll just go with these questions. First of all, give me a quick history of you, Coach, from when you was young and played football and all the way up.
When my dad was a big football fan, and there wasn't much choice. I mean, we were going to the games from the time I was a baby. He loved football, loved particularly Iola football. And by the time that in 7th grade, I weighed 95 pounds, and I was a starting middle linebacker. And I thought I was at least Dick Butkus. And I just loved it, and I always played running back and linebacker. And by the time my 7th grade year was over, I knew at some point in my career before it was over, I was going to come back and coach the Iola Bulldogs. That was a big goal of mine, and it worked out. I got there at just the right time. There were some good kids coming along, and they bought into the program, and we won a lot of games.
When you played back then, I'm sure you have some memories of some good athletes that you played with. You remember any offhand?
There was 4 that I particularly remember. A year ahead of me was a guy named Butch Vaughn and Junior Pointer. And then in my grade was a guy named David Gene Crenshaw and myself. And we were all pretty solid ball players. Probably, from what they call it now, 2A to 6A, we would have been good solid players on just about any team that we'd have been on.
Remember any teams that y'all played that was a tough team for y'all back then?
Well, Bremond, of course, I think beat Iola about 37 straight years. And we always dreaded playing them. They have been good as long as I can remember. And that was a big, big thing when we finally, in my second year back at Iola, we finally broke that winning streak after 37 straight losses to them. And that's really, I think, the game that put us on the map as far as statewide.
You want to elaborate on that game?
Well, it, really and truthfully, the people that played in it and the people that saw it still have a hard time really thinking back about what happened. Is we had played them real close. The first year I was there, it was like 31-28, and people couldn't believe because they'd been beaten out of 50, 60 to nothing for many years. So we already knew that we could play with them, but beating them was a big thing. So at halftime, we were trailing, I think it was 10-7, and we felt like we were in pretty good shape. But we came out and kicked off to them to start the second half, and they took the ball the whole third quarter and drove it all the way down the field and made it 17-7. And when that happened, I thought, man, it's fixing to be 38 straight years that they've beat Iola. But for some reason, the fourth quarter, we scored 38 points in the fourth quarter. A kid named Clifton Yo-Yo Isaac just went bananas. He was our quarterback, had a lot of speed, and they couldn't stop him. We had a little counter option play that they hadn't seen. We hadn't run it that year. We didn't run it in the first half, and they never could solve it. And he ran for about 4 touchdowns, and a kid named Frank Bookman, he was ripping them up the middle in between the tackles. And so as it turned out, we won the game 45-17, and all my friends were calling me on Saturday morning. Man, y'all really killed Bremond. I just can't believe y'all finally beat Bremond. But not only that, y'all really just destroyed Bremond. And I said, not quite like that, because we were behind at the end of 3 quarters, 17-7, and to score 38 points in a quarter against anybody is almost unbelievable. But against a championship team, when we scored 38 points in the fourth quarter and won that game easily, that was pretty big news.
At 91 or 92, Coach?
That was 91.
91?
Yep.
When you were growing up, a lot of people that are from Iola, that are my age, we see the town as a small 1A town. We can see that at one point there was potential. What was the town like when you grew up back then?
Really, a lot like it is right now. I think that there was a lot less mobility back then. To us, our big town was Bryan College Station. Really Bryan, because College Station wasn't much back in those days. But we only went over there like about once a month, and that was a big deal to us. We had our own, post office, bank, 2 grocery stores, a couple of cafes, and we just lived right there, and basically in town, and made a trip over to the big city maybe about once a month. It was very rural. Now people go over there every day, maybe twice a day, if they forgot something at the store. So that's been the big change. It was more a localized thing, and more people were actually out on the farm, out on the ranch, and working there, where nowadays most of them commute over to College Station and work.
I know when I moved there in 3rd grade back 87, 86, somewhere back in there. It was interesting to me because at the time the actual general store was still working. It was people were still using the general store back then, and so we'd walk in and they had the old shelving that went around in a square in the middle of it, and then they had the shelving around on the outside edge, and they had the shelves up on the wall, and you could buy ammo and you could buy all kinds of different things in there. And they had the old screen doors on the front when you'd open it, you could hear it slam back when it with the springs and everything on it. And so when I drive by there now, it's sad to see it not. I believe somebody did buy it and redid it with like a arts and craft type store or something like that. But not, knowing back then of where it was, I would imagine it'd been really cool to see it back when you was playing.
I tell you that it was almost like a small town version of Walmart. You honestly could buy your when basketball season came along, you could buy your Converse All-Stars there. They had nails. They had all kind of hardware. They had ammunition. They had groceries. There just wasn't too many too many things that they didn't provide right there at Mallet Brothers.
We, the school back then, I know when I moved there, it was just the one side, and it was kindergarten through 12th grade. Was that basically the same?
I actually started school in the old building where the elementary is now, sort of at the end of the football field. It was a big 2-story brick building, and they came in and then built the one that you most likely went to, sort of east of there, and tore that one down. And it never changed. I mean, it was K through 12 the entire time that I was in school, just that one building. And of course, that old gym was built in 1937, and we were still in that, And actually, my mother graduated that year, and they were trying to get it finished so they could have their graduation that year, but it didn't quite get finished in time. But it's been there a long time.
That was really historical gym. It was pretty neat. There was, you had the old caged in area up top for the announcers, and then the bleachers were wood, and you had to walk up them, and then they had the old windows that you could crank and open them, and they had the square cutouts, and I remember it pretty well.
I tell you that they'd have a big tournament there every year, and that stage area, they would make that the concession stand. Those ladies would make all kind of homemade stuff, and I mean, they set up tables up there, and as kids, we stayed all day when it was a basketball tournament. Just made a day of it, and it was a lot of fun.
It was pretty well used for donkey basketball too.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Where'd you go to college at, Coach?
I went to Sam Houston State. My plan was Mickey Mantle was my hero, and my plans were that I was a pitcher, and I was a pretty good pitcher, and I actually had a tryout with San Francisco Giants, and I could throw pretty hard, about 90, but not hard as they wanted me to, and I was a breaking ball pitcher. I threw a slider, and I threw what they call a real slow roundhouse curveball that I almost threw it underhand, real sidearm, and it would break an absolute mile. And it was so slow that those kids could not resist swinging at it. I don't care where it was. And when I got to that camp, they weren't interested in my breaking ball. They just wanted to see how hard I could throw. So I found out that I wasn't going to get up there and pitch on the Yankees. And so I knew the next best thing I could do was be a coach. And so that's where I cast my lot into becoming a coach.
Never knew you played baseball, Coach.
Loved it.
That's awesome.
Always my favorite sport.
So cool to hear that. When you started coaching in high school, where'd you start out at and what level?
Conroe High School for 5 years, and I was just coaching. Although I just kept moving up the ladder, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th, sophomores and so forth. And then they opened what's now the Woodlands High School. It was called McCullough back then. and I had very successful sub-varsity teams. We won, actually my team won 37 straight games, and I was a big believer in defense. We actually had 27 straight shutouts at one time. So, and I knew the kids real well, and so they brought in a whole new coaching staff from out in West Texas. But the head coach was Don Newsom, and he asked me to join that staff as their defensive coordinator because of my record as a defensive coach and because the kids knew me and respected me, and it was a good have that one person on staff that was familiar with the parents and the kids.
I feel like I probably know what defense you ran.
We always like bringing that pressure off the corners.
Oh yes,
and we had many different versions of it, anywhere from a split look to a 7-diamond look to a 6-1, 6-2. But always we had those guys coming off the corners, and on paper it doesn't look like it would be that good, but when you get those people coming in there that hard and giving that quarterback that little time, and we were playing mainly option teams, and that quarterback was going to get hit if he handed off or pitched out or whatever. He was going to. Nowadays they wouldn't let you do that, but we would murder that quarterback. And sometimes they would be playing their second or third string quarterback by halftime, which made a little bit easier. But we always liked bringing people off the edge, and we call them pinchers. And it was a lot of fun.
When you was at Oak Ridge, was there any big names you coached?
Really and truthfully, there were some good players at Oak Ridge, but not any guys that ever made the NFL or anything like that. We had a guy at the Woodlands by the name of Lee Johnson that was a punter and a place kicker, and he played up there in the NFL for about 19 years. And he was the only guy that really had a real substantial pro career. We sent a good many to sort of mid-majors and smaller schools, but no really great players.
So you coached there at Oak Ridge, and then you got the chance to go back home to Iola.
That's it. It was good timing. I knew the superintendent and the principal, and they asked me at Christmas. I went up there and carried my mom to church, and they said, "Man, we're in the market for a football coach, and you've told us before that at some point in your career you wanted to come back up and coach the Bulldogs." And the timing was right. They made me a good deal. They paid me right. They gave me an easy class load and just coached football. And it just seemed like that was the thing to do. And I did that for about 17 years. And it was a great move for me.
I know we enjoyed your economics class. So, so when you went back there, how did everybody treat you? Were they happy to have you back there, the fans?
Yeah, that they were a little apprehensive because probably 10 or 12 people that had gone to school there and were good athletes. I was most athletic as a junior, which that was the first junior that was ever actually voted most athletic. It always went to a senior, so I was a pretty decent athlete. But most of them had come back there with high expectations and high hopes, and it never panned out. And I think that a lot of people thought, well, this is going to be the same old, but I had a good background. Coached under a guy down here at Conroe by the name of W2 Stapler. It was a Hall of Fame coach. Learned a lot from him. And I was a student of the game. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't have any other ambitions. I didn't want to be a principal or a counselor or anything like that. I wanted to be a football coach. And that's what I was. And I devoted pretty much my life to it. And so when that first year, we went 8-2. And that's the most games I had ever won. And so when we went 8-2, it kind of opened everybody's eyes. And then that very next year, we turned around and went 10-0, and people just went nuts. They couldn't believe that Iola had pretty much been a doormat for 30-something years. was actually going 10-0, and then we put another one with that, and we put about 5 of those 10-0s up there pretty quick, and it made a lot of believers. And I'm going to tell you this: football was king in North Grimes County for a long time there.
I imagine it was probably good. You went back there and your family, you get to be around your family and get to coach with some of your family.
I got my brother was head coach out in a small school in West Texas, and I got him back with us. And I got a guy named Rob Stewart that had been with me at Oak Ridge, and then of course we had Doug Jones, and Doug Jones didn't ever get enough credit because he was everything. He was the equipment guy. He was the trainer. He held a lot of that stuff together. Ran the scout team against the first team, and that helped us a lot in practice. And I tell you this, that Roddy and Rob were as good a coaches at a Class AA level as anybody had in Class 6A. So it was a pretty good coaching staff for a small school.
I had the opportunity to play under Pat Patterson when I was at Eisenhower, and Coach Carson was there. There was a couple other big coaches there that I was under, Coach Guyton, some of those guys, and so I had the opportunity to be at a 5A level when I was at Eisenhower, and the technique stuff that I got to work with, the stuff that I learned there, helped me, I believe, later on, because at those bigger schools you have the opportunity to have specialty coaches. But I feel like when I was there, the stuff that we worked on was just as important or just the same level as what we did at 5A. I didn't feel like I went there and there was just some coaches that were there to coach. I felt like these guys were actually teaching us what we need to do. And at center, I feel like Coach Stewart made a huge impact on us, working with us on our offense, on the offensive line, and teaching us blocking back and technique and things of that nature too. So I really credit those guys to a lot of what, our senior year of how well we were in '94.
Yep. I tell you that Rob Stewart was as good a line coach as has ever come down the road, and he could figure out a way to block 10 and 11 trap. That's the fullback trap against any defense they put up there. Anytime we were in need of yardage, you could call 10 or 11 trap, and that was Willie Bookman running the ball in '94. And you could count on he was going to make 5-6 yards if he didn't break it for a long gainer. And I don't know how they'd throw us so many different defenses up there, but Rob had those guys trained so well they could block that play against any defense they put up there.
I still remember him standing out there showing us, and he would show so many different stunts against us, and we'd have to pick those up, and it was interesting to watch, because when I was watching film, watching these videos and going back and getting to see, you're right, there was different schemes every single time, and as guys that are coming to the line blocking, we didn't see that. We just knew what we were supposed to do. But going back and watching video, they were throwing all kinds of stuff at us. And then credit to Willie Bookman, who, if you were in a way when you went up the middle, you're in trouble. He's going to try to break his helmet. But yeah, and then Coach Jones, I have to say, he kept us in line. He really did, because there was a few of us that were pretty filthy mouthed out there. He kept us in line pretty good with that too.
Yeah, I think all the coaches had a lot of respect for Coach Jones, because he was a stand-up guy, and he really loved the kids, and he wanted what was best for the kids. And I'll tell you, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to find a guy like that, but he really wanted what was best for the kids.
So you get there, and you get the Iola, and you start your process into implementing these pinchers into the defense. And how long was it before you felt like, it might have been back in the '80s, but how long was it before you felt like that you really had understood how to take this defense and be a powerhouse defense through the '90s?
I tell you that we had sort of a multiple front, but the only thing that was stay consistent, those guys were coming off the corners. And they didn't give you much time to do a lot of thinking, to throw any long passes, to be a good option running quarterback. That wasn't going to happen with those. And it really and truthfully, we had a couple. We found out those pinchers didn't have to be Rhodes scholars. If you just got a guy that would come in there just as hard as they could, and the best example I ever had was a guy named Raymond Singletary.
Oh yeah.
Raymond was about 6 foot, 6'1", weighed maybe 180 pounds. And we'd put him on the weak side where there's just a guard and a tackle. There really wasn't anybody to block him. The back didn't want to block him because he was so tough. And he'd come in there and he was supposed to get the quarterback, but sometimes he'd get the dive, sometimes he'd get the pitch, sometimes he would chase them down. If they went around the other end, he'd chase them down because he could run about 4 or 5. And he benched about 300, just toughest kid you've ever seen. And the coaches told me, they said, Raymond's not getting the right guy. And I said, I'll tell you what, Raymond is tackling the guy with the ball. You know, that's the object of this game, is tackle the guy with the ball. Y'all coach those other 10 guys, and I'll coach Raymond. And I just told him, Raymond, you get on that weak side, and you come in there hard as you can, and you just keep doing what you're doing. Don't be listening to nobody but me. And it turns out, I think he ended up with like 31 sacks or something unbelievable. Anyhow, he got Texas Defensive Player of the Year and was captain of the South All-Stars at the football, coaches' All-Star game. So he opened a lot of eyes. And then after that, everybody wanted to be a pincher,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember Raymond really well. And he's tough on the field and off the field.
He was.
Yeah, he was. He's definitely one that you didn't want to tangle with.
Nope.
He was a tough old boy. Honestly, if you look over Iola and you think about someone during that time frame that is a picture perfect of somebody that you say, this guy is a presence of the tough part of Iola, Raymond's probably right there in the middle of that conversation. He was tough. I know my brother Wes and him was real good friends growing up, and I guarantee you they could clear a bar or two if they wanted to.
I would imagine that's true.
Okay, so the 90s teams, you had obviously lots of players, a lot of great athletes that came through there. You had a lot of guys in the early 90s. You talk about the pinch defense. I think the pinch defense, a lot of that also comes on having speed on the corners, because with your cornerbacks, now these guys are throwing up balls to get rid of them, to keep them getting killed. And these guys are able to run underneath them and pick away from them. Do you have some corners and free safeties that you would?
Well, I tell you, the very first year I was there, we had your brother Wes was one of the cornerbacks, and a guy named D.D. Davis, who was a dang good athlete, was the other one. And then there was a kid named Kevin Bertling, who's as good athlete as I ever coached at free safety. And I'm going to tell you, if the ball went up in the air, Kevin's going to go get it. And they were a dang good secondary, and they didn't have to worry about covering for a long amount of time. That quarterback was going to get rid of the ball quick, and it may not be right on target. When they threw it up, and it was kind of a free ball, for whoever could get it, we came down with it more times than they did. And we were always sort of blessed with some good secondary people. And we had some good linebackers over the years, too, really good ones. And matter of fact, in the 17 years I was there, we had 51 All-State kids. And there's a lot of people that would be Texas Team of the Decade if their coach had 51 All-State kids coming through. And really and truthfully, I think the players were always there, but they were more into basketball. They were more into baseball. They didn't have any off-season whatsoever. Off-season was just if you wanted to lift, or if you wanted to go to the gym and shoot baskets, or if you wanted to go out and play pass and tag. And I believe in those weights. We got those kids on those weights, and at that old baseball field, we had a pretty short left field, and they got to where there was a church behind the left field fence, And that preacher came and talked to me. He says, y'all got to do something. They're breaking every window in our church. They had never, and the whole reason was it was the same guys, but now they're benching 300 pounds instead of 200. And when they hit that ball, they can hit the church. I guarantee you that, pretty regular. And that being strong is good in any sport.
Coach, I got to tell you, I tell this story all the time. One of the longest balls I ever seen hit in my life, Coach Roddy was taking BP with us, and he hit a ball that went foul, and it hit in the middle of the highway and rolled all the way to the post office and hit the building up there. And to this day, we always talk about that is the longest ball ever. It's like the old ball that landed on the train and kept going. It just went on down there all the way to the post office. And of course, he said, I used to do that all the time.
I tell you, he was the same way in golf. Roddy is not a golfer, and he just swings with his arms, nobody at all, and he can still hit it a long way.
He's strong.
He is.
I tell you, he's probably one of those back in the day too that you didn't want to tussle with because he's a go-getter, that's for sure.
He was. I tell you, he was the perfect guy, and he became our I think I was still calling the defense then, but he became our defensive coordinator pretty quick, and he can get those guys wound up. And he didn't mind getting in their face a little bit, too, if they weren't getting it done. And we always believed in that defense. Now, we're going to have 11 best guys we had out there on defense. And offense, we figured it'd take care of itself.
Well, you know the old saying, offense wins games, defense wins
That was
championships.
it.
And so let's set the picture. You got your coaching staff. You got the early seasons, you're going in, you're figuring out the players. You got kind of which back then you get a lot of the young guys that are freshmen and sophomores. And so early 90s, they're getting to develop. They're moving on up. They're just building that big run for 1994. We come into the season. What was your mindset going into that season?
I thought we would be good. Shane was an outstanding quarterback, Shane McCown. Smithy had been an all-state wide receiver, Russell Smithy, and Hank Hargrave was our newspaper guy, and he said, what about this new guy, Benson? And I said, I hate to say this, but he is every bit as good as Smithy. He said, you're kidding me. Smithy was all-state last year. I said, no, this guy, he can go get it. He's got speed. He's rangy. And I said, with those two receivers, and then we had Willie Bookman at fullback, and then we had Kevin Isaac, who's one of the fastest kids we ever had at Iola as that slot back to run that inside and outside reverse. So we had the tools right there. It was just a matter of could Coach Stewart take these linemen and get us enough blocking to give Shane time and to open up some holes for Willie and Kevin. And as it turned out, he did. And we were about as explosive as any team I've ever seen.
You know, we always said about Kevin, he's a 4.4 on the 40, but he was a 4.2 when somebody was chasing him. He did not want to get hit.
Nope.
But he could fly.
He could.
And watching those videos, it's amazing. Or watching these videos, it's amazing seeing when he took off around the end, his sleeves hung out past his shoulder pads. And when he would run, you would see his sleeves flapping like this. And sometimes you'd see him speed up. And that was usually when the guy had pursuit on him. He'd still outrun him. It didn't matter. So we go into 94, and you go to your scheduling.
Well, what happened is when I got there, they already had my 91 and 92 schedule. You get a 2-year deal with everybody, home and home, you know. And that was already set. Well, we went 8-2, and then we went 10-0. Well, that 10-0 team in 91, we had just about everybody back for 92. So all those people that had played Iola for 30, 40 years, all of a sudden, they wouldn't play us. So I had to go out and get 5 new non-district opponents. And we brought them in there, and then we waxed them the next 2 years. I mean, bad. And we had good personnel. It wasn't all coaching, believe me. We had some good personnel. So in two scheduling times, we had already wiped out the 10 nearest opponents that we had played for years and years, we couldn't get a schedule. So some school, private school out of Houston, called and said, "Coach, we understand y'all are looking for games." I said, "Yeah, we're looking for 5 of them because all the people we played for years are not going to play us anymore." And so he said, "Well, we'll play you. We'll come up there and play you. Our kids like to get out in the country, you know." I said, "That's good." Well, that word spread like wildfire among. They've got a clique there, those private schools in Houston, and word got out. By the end of the week, everyone down there had called, "Hey, Coach, I hear y'all looking for some games." Yeah. So we ended up where we weren't even going to have a non-district, to where we had 5 private schools on the non-district schedule, and we didn't know a thing about them. We knew that they had nice uniforms and they had money, and there was no recruiting rules. They could get whoever they could get. So we didn't really know what we were up against, and we ran through that thing and beat all of them 50, 60 to nothing. And really and truthfully, a lot of those games we had that much at halftime, and so everybody was saying, "Well, y'all are 5-0, but you just beat these private schools." Turns out those private schools were just as good as the people that we had been playing. And then we got in district. Instead of averaging 55 points a game, we were averaging 60 points a game. And we ran through there just unbelievable. It was just unbelievable scoring, and hard for anybody to believe it. And that everybody got their attention, hey. And then we get in the first round of the playoffs, and we're playing Bartlett, defending state champ. And we go up there and score 60 on them. And then the next game we score, in the second playoff game, we score 64. The third playoff game, we score 66. And still, even in this modern era, nobody has scored that many points in their first 3 playoff games after all these years. So it wasn't just that we were beating inferior competition. It was just that was a great football team.
So we open off the season in Lutheran South. When we go to Lutheran South, what was your initial, when we go down there? First of all, it's in East Houston, Southeast Houston. Was hot.
Really
extremely hot. And on top of that, it rained midway through the game, and then the sun came out, which made it even hotter and humid.
Yep.
In fact, we had some guys that were struggling with it pretty good because they'd never played in anything like that.
Right.
But do you remember going into that game what the mindset was, since we were playing a new school?
Well, it was like a noon kickoff or something. I mean, I don't think we'd ever played a day game at that time. So that was something altogether, and it was just as hot as what you're saying. And I thought, man, I don't know, we didn't have that many kids. And I thought maybe our kids are going to wilt, but it turned out, I think they wilted a little bit quicker than we did. And we ended up, with a pretty easy win. And it was like those country kids, we're going right through downtown on that freeway, and they're looking at all these huge buildings, and they're saying, "What has Coach got us into? We're coming down here to play at Houston school, and we're from a little podunk place up there." And there was a lot of doubt among a lot of the kids that never even been to Houston, really, And I think that gave us a lot of confidence when we handled them real good.
They were pretty big too. They weren't little. They were a big team. And then we beat them 54-0 out of the box, and I think they elected to run the clock the second half on that game. Which happened quite a few more times.
Yeah.
For those of y'all that don't know what that means, it means that they just weren't going to stop the clock for nothing in the second half. They were just going to run the clock out. We're going to play. And so when we're up 54-0 at halftime, basically the whole second string and third string is out there getting their playing time in. And because you're not going to score a lot of points in that second half, most of the time, with the clock running anyways, they didn't score as many points, but they definitely racked up some yards. I think James Robbins had on the season as a backup running back over 800 yards.
That's about right.
Season. And Cody had over 1,000 yards passing, I believe he did. Yep. And so pretty impressive for second string backs, and we go to Northland Christian. And Coach, I'll let you have that one.
Well, we go down there and we're playing, I think, a late afternoon game that time also. I don't think that field had any lights. And anyhow, they were in solid black, and they were big. They had twice as many kids out for football as we did, and they were in solid black uniforms. And their captains, they sent out the 4 biggest guys I've ever seen as their captains. All of them were about 6'6". And our captains walk out there, and they're about this much shorter and kind of looking up like, who are these grown men, and what has Coach got us into? And even Roddy comes over and says, I don't know what the hell you did catching these. I said, I didn't know who we were getting, And it was pretty scary, I'll tell you that for a fact. Well, they didn't know that some of those country kids we had were pretty doggone tough, Old Willie Bookman and Tim Holmes, to name 2. And on the opening, we kicked off. And on the opening kickoff, we put about 4 of their guys out. I mean, when the smoke cleared, there was about 4 of their guys just laid out flat that weren't, I think they found out right off that we were pretty serious about the game, And I think it kind of shell shocked them. Well, anyhow, I think by halftime it was like 52-0. And so the second half, we did just what you're describing. The coach come over and says, Coach, what do you think about a running clock? I said, I'm all for it, because, we've got a tough schedule and we don't want to get anybody hurt. This game is decided. And what they'd do is we'd kick off, and they'd start the clock going. It would run straight through for 12 minutes. They'd stop it, change ends, it'd take 1 minute for that. Started again, so the second half lasted exactly 25 minutes. 12 minutes, 1 minute to change ends, and 12 minutes for the second quarter. And 25 minutes later, that game was over, and it was still 52-0, which was good, And we gained a lot of confidence from those 2 games.
I think the funny thing you talk about it is that the way it worked with 25 minutes, basically, when we were home, our 5th quarter at downtown was actually during the 4th quarter.
That's about right. Yeah, those ladies had to get that stuff ready pretty quick.
They better get after it, because we're going to win a ball game quick. That game that we played, I have to tell you this. I don't know if I've ever told you this before, Coach, but Donnie Robbins and I were set up as your wedge busters in the middle on the kickoff. And Donnie and I had made a pact at the beginning of the season. We were just going to kamikaze into the middle of everybody, every play for the whole season, and knock everybody out that we possibly could. That was our whole goal. So there's many videos that I see where the ball's coming our way, and we're just running straight into people, trying to just drop these people. We had speed on the corners. Guys were going to catch up with everybody, right? Yeah. So and later in the season, we made some tackles. But for the most part, me and Donnie was going downfield, head down, and it actually helped when we got to Bartlett, because that was a big game that we need. And I'm pretty confident my brain injury this late in life came from Bartlett, because those old boys didn't move when we hit them. And so anyways, so we go Northland Christian, we go Northwest Academy. That was a home game.
Yeah.
And
that was pretty interesting also, because they had just won state the year before that or something, and they were pretty cocky, and they knew we'd kind of destroyed those first 2 teams, and I think they came up there going to kind of give us a lesson, and that one ended up, I think, worse than the others. I don't remember exactly what the score was, but it was pretty bad.
Coach, I'm pretty confident that's the game. Either that one or Waco Christian was the game that I was removed for fighting. And I'm pretty sure I can tell the story now, Coach, right? I had a tight end holding me. This is a perfect story for Coach, right? I had a tight end holding me, and he held me 3 times straight. And I told him, you hold me one more time. And so he did, but I knew he was going to. So I wrapped him up, went with him, took him to the ground. I had the big pads on, and I pounded on him a couple of times, and Ref grabs me and 50, you're out of here. So I go to the sideline. I got to tell the story, yes. So I go to the sideline, and I'm sitting on the bench. I got my helmet off. I'm leaning over. Can't believe I just got kicked out of a football game. They turn the football over. We have the football. I hear offense. And I'm still sitting there, my head down. I hear Bills. And I look up, and Coach is standing on the sideline looking at me, and I go running over, and I say, Coach, he kicked me out. And he said, Bills, you get back in there on offense only. And he said, and if you get caught, I'm sending you back to Aldine. I played the whole rest until the offense finally came out after we were up by 50-something points. I played the whole rest of the time and never got called out, but I didn't play any defense after that. Sorry, Coach, I have to tell all
Well,
this.
I don't really know. You know, we may not have worked the backup center a whole lot. We had plan A, and that was it.
Yes, sir. Not by that point. We definitely hadn't had. So it worked well. It worked out. And, you know, to be honest with you, as many people we had on the sideline, I think we did have a couple of double jerseys on the sideline anyways. They may not have known anyways. But anyway, so we go and play Waco Christian. Waco Christian was, I'm pretty confident that's one of the teams we could put 110 against.
Easy.
What was your mindset on that one, Coach, looking back?
Well, they came up there, and they were a pretty scrawny bunch. We were 3-0. We were riding high, and you know, I'm telling you, it looked like, I think about the first 4 passes that Shane threw went for touchdown. We'd run a flag, and they'd hit Benson. We'd run a flag next time we got it, and hit Smithy, and maybe Willie busted loose on a trap, and Kevin on it, that inside reverse we call 66 or 67 tackle trap. I mean, we'd put 28 points on the board, and it hardly had broken a sweat, and our defense was really, really tough, you know. And I think we were taking the ball. I don't think they ever even got to punt. But we'd take the ball away from them on a fumble or an interception way before then, and it was pretty brutal. It was one of those games. It was a good thing we did have running clock.
If I remember correctly, with that particular game, they were small. They really were small, but if I remember correctly, in that game, there was a couple of situations where I'm confident that halfway through the second quarter, the whole backup offense went in.
It really, I didn't really want to make headlines by scoring 150 points on somebody, you know. And I think that could have happened very easily then. But I'm telling you, though, Cody Evans was a freshman. He was a dang good quarterback. And he could have started for a lot of people, believe me. And if he hadn't had an all-stater in front of him, he'd have been starting for us. And then James Robbins, as you said, I think he made around 800 yards just as a backup, and mainly in the second half. He was a good running back. He is hard-nosed. And those two guys, I'm telling you, there wasn't that much drop-off, and you put them out there. They were good athletes and good football players.
We go the following week. I believe the following week we went to Louise or Normandy.
I really can't remember.
It was Louise. I think it was Louise we went to. The hard part about that one was losing Jamie Dahman in that game. But the trip, there's a couple stories to this trip. First of all, at that point, we were still unscored on going down to Louise. And what was your take on that game?
There was a lot of interesting things that game. First of all, is the coaches agree on the officials before the season ever starts. And so we agreed we were going to use the Houston chapter, which was fair for us and them. Houston wasn't that close to them, and it wasn't that close to us. It should have been neutral officials. Somehow, they told those guys not to come, and they just hired some local guys from their chapter down there to call the game. And that was a little worrisome because, like you say, it was, I think, first district game, and Louis had some good athletes, and they were in the habit of winning district or coming pretty close. And so that was pretty upsetting when I had my list and I introduced myself, and none of those officials that were supposed to show up showed up. It was all a new group, and so that wasn't good. And then we jumped on them and got them pretty good. But Jamie was only like about 5'7", 5'6", 5'7", and he weighed over 300 pounds. He is a great singer and a good football player, but he broke his leg. And Jamie wasn't bashful about pulling a chair up to that dinner table. Even though he had a broke leg, he says, "Coach, do you think that before they carry me to the hospital that I could eat with y'all after the game? Eat that chicken fried steak?" I said, "Yeah, if you feel like you can definitely do that." So he did, and even with that broke leg, he hung around and ate with us. And then Constable Larry Adams put him in his patrol car, and they took off for Bryan College Station to get his leg set. His mother was going to meet him over there. And so Constable Adams had been a deputy down there in that country for 20 years before he came back to Iola. He was an Iola native, good friend of mine. But we didn't pay attention going down there. He and I were in the patrol car, and we led the buses down. We went through all these roads and got there easy. Well, when he took off, it was the most foggy conditions. You couldn't see 10 feet in front of you. We had no way to really know how to get back. And it was those rice fields, and that fog set in. They keep them flooded. That fog set in. We couldn't see. And so I'm riding with that. At that time, we were, I think, already ranked we might have been #1 in the state. We were right up there at the top. And Channel 3, at 10:20, I think their sports came on. They would have me call in, and they would put my picture on the screen during the sports thing. And they would ask me questions about the game. I think we were the only highly ranked team in the Brazos Valley that year. And so I was riding with Hank Hargrave, the sports guy. And I called him at 10:20 and gave our report. And we got about another 2 miles down the road, and we look, and the bus is pulled over, and the equipment van, Rob Stewart's driving the bus with players on it. Roddy's driving the equipment van. He had a bunch of the junior high kids as his managers. They're both pulled over, and Roddy and Rob are out there in the headlights, bowed up, fixing to go to it, fighting. And I said, when I saw the bus pull over, I said, "Somebody's sick or something. We got to see what's going on." We get out and find out they're trying to fight. And I said, what's going on, guys? Because they were good friends, you know.
Yeah.
Roddy says, "Rob Stewart doesn't know where the hell he's going." And he missed a turn back there. Well, I mean, anybody would have missed a turn. You couldn't see the dang thing. Anyhow, Rob Stewart says to Roddy, "That's the first damn smart thing I've ever heard you say. But I don't know where the hell I'm going." So anyhow, I got them kind of simmered down. And Hank says, "Just a minute." He says, "I wrote an article, a pregame article, and I put in the directions in that article for the fans to find the field." He said, "We'll get that article out and turn it upside down or backward or something and figure out where the hell we are and what road to go back on." And if it hadn't been for that, I truly think we'd have been spending the night in one of those rice fields down there. It was terrible. But anyhow, we figured it out from his article where to go, and we finally got back home about 3 o'clock that morning.
I'm pretty sure most of us was asleep on the bus.
Yeah.
That's great.
It was a pretty eventful evening.
We go to following week. I believe the following week was when we went to Calvert. And that was an interesting one. In fact, on all our videos we have, that's one of the only videos I don't have. That one and Thorndale. I don't have those two videos.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't see Thorndale either. But yeah, Calvert had a kid, Terry. I think his name was. Oh, I can't remember his last name. Terry something. He was a linebacker. That was a pre-all-state pick. You remember that kid?
I remember they had when the other team's linemen can outrun your backs, you're in trouble.
Right.
And that's what you were facing with Calvert every year. They were always the state champion track team, you know, and that just scares you to death playing anybody with that much speed. And man, when you get a linebacker that can run all over that field, you know you may be in for a long night. And I think they had a little old nose guard that kept trying to squirt through there. And it, you know, it's always a challenge. We had a hard time beating Calvert.
We beat them 14-6. They scored on us. They're the first ones to score on us all season.
Yep.
I remembering back on that game, the lighting was really bad. We played at Calvert. The lighting was really bad.
Yep.
I will say, though, it's the only time I'm going to plug myself on this whole video, Coach.
Okay.
Terry was in on 3 tackles the whole game. And about midway through the second quarter, he was crying to the ref, he's holding me, he's cutting my legs. And I was cutting his legs. I would, as soon as I snap it, I'd go off tackle, try to beat him to where we was going at, and I would clip his legs as fast as I could, and the ref never called anything. So we did good right there. But,
yeah, we did.
But, yeah, they were extremely fast. And when we left there, I wanted to ask you because, you know, of course, everybody talks about all the games before there and who we played and everything else. When we left there, what was your mindset when we left that game?
I really thought, I think that it's a good chance we just won district tonight because we knew, man, they just give us a lot of hell every year. And we knew it was going to come down to that. Even that one time, that first 10-0 season, I mean, it was one of those 7-6 games or something. It was real close also. And we were good friends, and I still am with their coaches. We still talk all the time now. But, man, I'm going to tell you this. They had some talent, and they knew how to spread that offense out, and they scared you to death.
They had a really good athletic basketball team, too.
Oh, man.
They really did. In fact, that year we had a great basketball team.
Yep.
Went to state that year, and then we they had a kid that could dunk out of nowhere. But I watched Chris Anderson put one of his shots into the upper deck, give the bleachers with a swat, and so of course we had, you know, with Chris that was pretty interesting as well. But so we go. I'm confident in there. There's Normandy is on my list. I'm pretty confident Normandy was between Calvert and Burton.
That sounds about right.
That was our homecoming.
That's probably about right.
And the lead up to that week was quite interesting. We won't go too deep in that one, Coach. I don't need.
You and Smithy always seem to have amnesia when it comes to that bonfire incident.
I forgot everything, Coach. Anything that's incriminating, I forget. But I will say that it did set the tone for that game. The short form of it, we had a gentleman that snuck up late at night, was going to try to set our bonfire on fire, and he made a mistake, and he paid for it dearly. And with a couple other people, and it kind of got a little hairy that night. And we called Deputy Huey up, and he came and sat with us. And let's just say that the night got a little out of hand, but it set the tone because it for our homecoming game against Normandy, and no one burned the bonfire except us. And which was a great bonfire. I think we had 250 pallets and trees leaning on that thing. And I might not say this very loud, but there was some crackling and popping going on during the fire. But anyways, we go into that game, and Normandy didn't have a bad football team that year. And in fact, they were pretty good the year after that as well.
Yeah.
But I think we were so upset with what happened that we put it on them pretty good.
Yeah, we did. I tell you this, that I was I was sitting there on pins and needles because I think by then we were probably ranked number probably number 2 in the state. Thorndale was probably ranked number 1. We were ranked number 2, and I was sitting there with a great football team that had, like I say, had given up 6 points the whole year. And I'm thinking, man, we're fixing to be on the national news for all this stuff that's gone on. I said, something bad is going to happen. And as it turned out, thank God, Constable Adams and the sheriff up there at Normandy were good friends. And they got together and talked it over. And as it turned out, that guy that instigated all that, who was a full-grown man, had no business with those kids. The week before that, he had broke into the Normandy homecoming dance. And he and the sheriff ended up getting into a wrestling match. So he already had a bad reputation with that sheriff. And the sheriff didn't want to get any of our kids in trouble or any of the Normandy kids. But that guy, I think they threw the book at him pretty good.
I never knew that side of it. He was, I will just say that guy, he claimed he was a Vietnam vet. He was all tatted up. He used some words to some of our football players he shouldn't have used. He paid dearly for it. Let's just say that I would never want to get punched in the face by Willie Bookman. I'm just saying. Anyways, it was that game was pretty rough because throughout the game, I remember, Coach, there was one point I chased a guy down the sideline and onto the sideline, and as I went past their guys onto the sideline, they huddled around me and started punching me. And the ref come running in and grabbed me and helped pull me out of the mess over there. But it was pretty brutal the whole game.
I tell you that there was no love lost, and I like those guys, coaches and all up there, but there was no love lost between Iola and Normandy for a number of years. And as a matter of fact, we beat them 12 straight years, and it was very satisfying to the people at Iola because Normandy had run it up on Iola. Like I think they were leading like 64-0, and the time expired on their last touchdown. They insisted on trying the 2-pointer, and they ran that little trick play where they make like they're going to kick it, and he pitched it back over his head, one of those back circles around to make it 66-0. And there was some hard feelings between the Iola people and the Normandy people, and we were thumping them, like I say, for 12 straight years, and it did not sit well with them. It tickled the Iola people, but it was not sitting well with the kids, the coaches, or the fans up at Normandy.
Well, you pulled us by halftime. We didn't play the whole game on that one. They ran the clock the whole second half. That was a 62-0 thumping we gave them.
I knew it was pretty bad.
And then the rest of the week, just worried to make sure we weren't going to get in trouble. And so, thank goodness we didn't. And the powers that be saw to it, and we are very thankful. But then we played Burton. We played Burton at home. I don't remember Burton being that big of a team, but they were big. There were some big old boys on that team.
Burton always had, matter of fact, at one time they had the state champion shot putter. They always had some big, strong, they had a good mixture. They had some fast kids, they had some big kids, they had some tough kids. And year in and year out, Burton would give you all you wanted. But, boy, they had no plan to stop those wide receivers. And our superintendent and Burton's superintendent were good friends at the time, and they were standing there in the end zone. And our superintendent told me afterward, about the first 4 passes we threw, it hit Benson, it hit Smithy, it hit Benson, it hit Smithy. And all of them went the distance on either post or flag routes. Shane could lay that ball in there now. And he said, this is like backyard football, It's just like choose up and,
Like 6 minutes.
And we were keeping them, the line was keeping them off Shane. If you kept them off Shane, he's going to put it on the ball. And he could throw a soft ball that was easy to catch. And he could burn it in there if he needed to. But he was really good at laying out those flag and post routes. And, it was like a pitch to catch. And I don't think we ran it for a while. We just threw it, and we'd jumped out on them. pretty bad quick.
Milano. We went to Milano, which I drive through there all the time. And Milano put up 7 on us.
That's right. And that coach still brags about that. He says, you look at that. All of them are zeros. Calvert scored 6, and Milano scored 7. And he said that was he was a great offensive mind because he scored 7 points.
He scored against the pitchers. Yeah. Bartlett. And so we run the gauntlet. We come down to Bartlett. I remember seeing in the paper that week, we were picked by all the newspaper writers out of College Station to get beat by 20 points.
That's about right.
And then we play them at Grosbeck, which was an incredible stadium.
Right.
I'll throw my 2 cents in there and then turn it to you, Coach. Our playing at Eisenhower, I got the chance to play at W.W. Thorne Stadium, practice in the Astrodome. Got a lot of opportunities to play on some good fields, right? We go to Grosbeck, and Grosbeck had a locker room. When you come out of the locker room, you went down a stairwell and then came running out on the 50-yard line or 40-yard line or something along that line. And I remember when the kids had not done that yet. So the team hadn't done that yet. So as we come running out, some of us had turf cleats on, some of us had regular cleats on, and as we come running out that tunnel, and it kind of went up at an angle as you come running out on it. I remember as we ran through, I was always first in everything. Me and Benson, we always tried to lead everything. And so, which I couldn't keep up with them most of the time. But anyway, so we go running out of that tunnel, and as I remember everybody's faces when they hit that field and turn around and look back at the bleachers, and how it was like a whole nother gear that turned into let's go. I mean, it really was.
Yeah. I tell you that Bartlett was tough, boy. I mean, they were really good. And we knew we'd have to play our best game just to hang in there with us. As a matter of fact, that year before when they won it, they beat us in a good game, like 10-7 or something in first or second round. And we knew we were going to be in for a game. Never dreamed we'd score 60 points on Bartlett. I don't think they'd given up 60 points in the 2 previous seasons combined, you know. But, man, I'm telling you, Benson and Smithy put on a show. Y'all were giving them plenty of time to throw it. And Willie broke 1 or 2 up the middle. Kevin broke 1 or 2. And, I mean, the offense was on display that night. And it was I do remember one thing is we had never played on AstroTurf before. And so we went up there about an hour early. And we told them, bring all your various kind of shoes. And let's let them get out there and play pass and tag, which looked kind of crazy. We just let the whole group play pass and tag and try on their turf cleats, their regular cleats. Some even wore tennis shoes. They were wearing everything. And everybody got comfortable with whatever they wanted to wear before we got out there in the game. And so they knew that they felt good about that. And Roddy never really worried about anything, but he was very apprehensive about that game because he was afraid we weren't going to have good footing, and we knew what we were up against. So when we hung 60 on them, I knew we had a chance to make a run for it.
And that was true AstroTurf. That was not the turf of the day. That was the old Astrodome AstroTurf.
That's it.
Yeah, and it was. I remember, watching the game. Watching this video, I watched some of the players literally looked like they picked up a 10th on their 40 times.
Oh yeah,
they were flying. It was absolutely amazing to watch Kevin and them run with the football.
It was.
We go. So Bartlett's over. Did you get a call from any of the writers any of the people that were newspapers?
Yeah, it was pretty big news because, like I say, man, those guys were some good. And if we had eked out, a 14-12 win or something, I think that it wouldn't have been. But it was pretty big news statewide. And they almost would think it was a misprint, in the paper that Bartlett gave up 60 points. And I think that there was still some doubt about how good we were until that night. after that, I think a lot of people thought these guys are deserving of that ranking, you know.
So we go Bartlett, we go to Sabinal, which were some big old boys.
Yep.
Had you ever seen Sabinal or been around anything with Sabinal before?
I had sent somebody to scout them, and we swapped some film with them, and we really thought it would be a close game, and we ended up hanging 64 points on them in the second round, and now people are scoring 60 points right and left now, but in 1994, 60 points was a tremendous amount of points. And so after scoring 60 on Bartlett, we come back and score 64 on Sabinal. And I'm thinking, man, this is a pretty doggone explosive team. And we really, by the end of the first quarter, we knew we had them in our hip pocket.
The next week, we go to Agua Dulce, or go play Agua Dulce. That was an interesting game because for a while there, it was close.
We played it, I believe it was
Burger Center.
Yeah,
yes,
Burger Center.
Yes.
Nice place. Matter of fact, the Cowboys and Oilers used to play an exhibition game there every year. It would hold a bunch of folks, and it was a nice place. And we went there, and our kids were pretty confident by then, but they had a big old tailback that weighed about 225, and I mean they weren't bashful about handing him that football. And what was funny is they were never knocked off any long runs, but they were just consistently making first downs on us, and our defense certainly wasn't used to that, And they would score, and then we'd come back and we'd break a long one and go all the way on a pass or run or something, and we'd score within 2 or 3 plays. We'd regain the lead. They'd get it back. They'd go on one of those long drives again, and we couldn't stop them. And they'd end up pounding it. 5 or 6 minutes later, they'd be in the end zone. And I'm going to tell you this, it looked for a long time like whoever had the ball last was going to win that game. Because it was, I can't remember what the total yards was and all that. I know the final score was 66-36 in our favor. But it was a tit for tat for a long time.
I remember seeing a stat on it that there was a total of just over 1,000 yards offense.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it was pretty impressive.
The funniest thing that happened is, and we finally got a 2-touchdown lead on them late in the fourth quarter, and we got the ball. And I told Rob, I said, all we want to do, I don't care if we score again or not, but I just want a slow ground game. We're not going to throw it. Just control the ball, make first downs, let that clock run, and let's get the hell out of here. And the first play, we call 67 tackle trap. And they cave that line in from the right, and that tackle pulled and kicked their end out. And from where we were standing, you could absolutely drive an 18-wheeler through there. It was a huge hole. And they handed off to Kevin on that inside handoff. And as quick as he hit the line of scrimmage, I said, he's gone. And I grabbed Stewart and started choking him. I said, stop him, like he was going to stop Kevin Isaac running around the other end. Stop him. And Rob was laughing about it afterward, but man, I was so disenchanted because I knew that was going to give the ball right back to him, But that gave us like a 20-point lead, so we had a little margin for error. But I did not want to see that joker go the distance. I wanted to have a slow, just a ground game that would pound it out and run that clock out, because we already knew we couldn't stop them.
If I remember correctly, we put up one more after that. Yes, sir. Yeah, that was a good game. I remember when it was really close. There was one play that helped break it open, and it just happened to be a bad snap on a punt. Anyways, that's a whole nother story, Coach. But hey, buddy took it for a first down. We kept moving. And
I remember that. they sent me a picture. Somebody did from Brian. So y'all need to practice on your. Well, we had one thing we never punted. We practiced punting in practice, but that's different in the game.
Right.
And so they said y'all gonna have to do one of three things: either get a real tall punter, or carry a stepladder out on the field. I can't remember
one of them was put them in stilts.
Yeah.
And one of them was put a guy at 10, 15, and 20 yards.
And what's funny is Buddy caught the ball with his back to the line. Yeah. And, of course, they all went to set up a wall, and he turned and ran right up the middle and made first down. Yeah. But it ended up being, a good play.
Yeah, it changed. It definitely changed.
We definitely got a lot of advice on that.
Yes. I needed it. Well, we punted 8 times all season, except for Thorndale. We punted 8 times against Thorndale.
That's about right.
And the only reason why I didn't snap it over Buddy's head, because the ball was soaking wet and it was heavy.
Yep.
And so we go to the end all of that season was Thorndale. And throw my 2 cents out. I remember I was concerned that we coached because somebody had bought these huge jackets for us.
Yep.
And then somebody came with these T-shirts that said Iola Bulldogs 1994 state champs.
Yep.
Which to me, that's a bad omen.
Yep.
You're jinxing yourself. And so when we got on the bus to head to Thorndale, it was raining. I head to College Station. It was raining. And people were wearing those jackets. And I didn't want one on. I was in shorts and shimmel, cut off shirt.
Right.
We come off the bus. I go to the football field. I'm screaming and running and hollering and pumped up. And I was a little wacky. But a lot of the other kids, not all of them, a lot of the other kids were in those big old jackets. And they were standing around and hanging their head looking, oh man, it's raining. And then I'll never forget when the doors opened up at the end of the field from the locker room. And Thorndale come running out in shorts and shimmel, the whole team screaming and hollering and running across the field and throwing footballs with each other. And I remember looking back at some of our players' faces and them with just the look of fear.
Yep.
Before we started.
Yep. I tell you that it was a true number 1 and number 2 matchup. And, it rained the whole freaking week. And of course, they didn't have turf at that time. And it was just a quagmire out there. And it rained all during the game. And, we had to throw the ball. And we knew we had to throw the ball. And it just wasn't a night when you could throw the ball. And that, I tell you that they were so good. Everybody said, oh, if we'd have played them on good conditions and all that, we'd have beat them. But I don't know. I wanted to agree with them, but I don't know about that. But I know one thing. It would have probably been one of those 66-60 games. It would have been a dang high-scoring, close game had we played in good conditions, because they were a ground attack and we were a passing attack. The night was made for a ground attack.
Well, they went for 2 years after that to 2A and won state championship there as well.
They were legitimate now.
And they had a running back that was almost my age now. No, he wasn't that old, but he definitely was older. And he was known 3 years straight. He went for 1,900, 2,000, and 2,100 yards. And he was a big kid.
Yep.
And I knew we were in for it when he took a ball around the left side, got stuck in a rut over here and went completely all the way back across the field and hooked it up the sideline and went. He probably ran 80 yards on a 40-yard run.
I tell you that when you have a defense that was as good as ours, and he'd gone the whole season with like eight shutouts and given up 7 and given up 6, given up 13 points in the 10-game regular season, and we knew we were really good on defense. And the first play, they pitch it out to him, and he fumbles the pitch and then picks it. Anybody else, we would have sacked him back there for 10, 15-yard loss. He picks it up and circles back around our whole defense and goes the whole way. We knew that was a man among boys, and and that's exactly what it turned out.
They had a quarterback, Anthony Dominguez, who played linebacker as well. I actually ran into Anthony not too long ago, probably about 10 years ago. I went to college at Hardin Simmons with Kelly Cowan, Coach
Yep.
Cowan's son. He
Yeah.
was a receiver for them then.
Yeah.
In fact, Kelly came to me first week I was there, and I had an Iola shirt on. And he said, James Bills. I said, oh, yeah. I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And he said, we spent more time on film watching y'all, getting ready for y'all. He said, you know, we just knew y'all were going to be the toughest team to beat. And he said, we knew your defensive line, your offensive line, we knew everybody's names. He said, because he said, I sat with my dad watching film. He said, and so I knew everybody. And he said, I want to show you something. I said, okay. So we went down to his dorm. He walked in, and there was that gold ring sitting there. I said, I appreciate it. He said, you want to hold it? I said, no, sir, I don't want to hold that ring. But it was humbling to hear him say they were worried to death about us. Yeah. They really were.
I tell you that, you know, them and Bartlett would just go neck and neck every year. And sometimes Bartlett would beat them, sometimes they'd beat Bartlett, and they were in the same district. And so I think when we gave Bartlett that thrashing that we did, I think they became very serious about the Iola Bulldogs and knew that was the team that could knock them from the state title. That was the only team that could. And I think they concentrated a lot of their effort and practice time on us.
That's what he said. He said they knew it was going to be us. And you know, looking back, Coach, I think that, you know, we took one game at a time, which we were supposed to do. And there's a chance if we'd have done anything different, we might have slipped up. I agree with you. I think if we'd have played that game in the best conditions for us, it would have been a shootout. But they were men. They were men. Their defensive tackle was 6'2", 6'3", and 275 pounds. And I remember one of our linemen. I won't mention his name, but he was a good lineman. He was young, and so sophomore, and he was one that had come in and taken over for Jamie Dahman. And he come back to the line, and he said he had big old alligator tears in his eyes. And he looked at me, and I said, "Man, what is wrong with you?" He said, "He's kicking my butt," and he was. But they were stunting the linebackers all night long. Every play they were stunting the linebackers. They had split linebackers. They stunt them. Anthony Dominguez was one of them. And honestly, on any condition, it would have been hard to pick them up.
Oh, yeah.
It really would have. They played in the same conditions we did.
Yep.
They just.
You got to hand it to them. They were probably one of the best. Well, I always say now I call it AA because the kids now, if you talk about A now, they think you're talking about 6-man. But
yeah,
I'm gonna say they were one of the best AA teams that probably ever was. You know, they were a great football team.
We were talking earlier, and I was saying that I played at a 5A level when I was in high school and moved up there, moved to live with my mom up there. And I played an opportunity to see players at all levels, guys that went pro, Keith Miller, who played for Tennessee, and Tommy Hendricks, who played for Miami. And I saw a lot of pro players when I played. And there were several kids in Iola, at least 3 or 4 kids in Iola that I could honestly say that they would have started at any 5A school that they went to. I was at Aldine Eisenhower. We went to state semifinals 3 years in a row. And it was a really, really good football team running the veer offense. And I promise you that there were a handful of kids on our team at 1A that would have started on that 5A team with no problem.
I tell you that people now don't really know. Once we got that thing rolling in the early 90's, it was almost unbelievable the fanatic fans, the whole school, the whole community, really all of North Grimes County. Everybody in North Grimes County went to the Iola game, and South Grimes County went to the Navasota game. And I mean, we had a following now, and it was important. And those kids came up all the way from junior high wanting to be a football star at Iola. And I'm telling you, when we got it rolling, we had them coming for a long time.
Had a lot of overachievers.
Yeah.
I remember some of the kids on the line. I put myself in that category because I wasn't starting at Eisenhower. I played, but I wasn't starting. But there was a lot of kids that lined up on the line with me on offense and defense that they gave everything they could every single play that they were on the field.
I've said this a lot of times, is it's easy to pick out those all-state guys. Any old widow woman up in the stands can pick out those guys because they just are that, you know.
Right.
But we had a lot of kids for a lot of years that all they did was do their job, and I mean they had to really bust their butt to get the job done. But they were doing that behind the scene, tough stuff that it takes to make a team a great team. Never got the credit they deserved. But I had more admiration for a lot of those kids that really shouldn't have been as good as they were, but they just gave us what they had and got the job done.
I felt like it was great that so many kids in that environment grow up together, know each other. And even when kids come in from out of town to live there in Iola, they accept them, become part of the program, become part of the team, and the camaraderie is on a whole nother level than what you see at some of these other schools.
Yep.
The game at Thorndale, the bleachers, to me, is still one of the coolest things that I can remember back, because it wasn't just packed in the bleachers. It literally was standing 2 to 3 people deep all the way down the fence line at A&M Consolidated there.
Yep.
It was completely packed.
Yep. It was an amazing time.
Did any of the teams afterwards that you come through, you think they, comparison-wise, what were some of the players that you saw comparison-wise?
I tell you, as I've said before, every time I go back up there for homecoming, I really have got to where now I only go to the homecoming game. My night driving is not the best, and but I always make an effort because I still know and love so many of the people up there at Iola. But you know, it's just they'll always say, Coach. I mean, this is probably 10 different teams will say, Coach, we were the best team that ever came through Iola, weren't we? You know, I said, yeah, y'all were. And it would be hard for me to pick the best team. Statistically, you know, the 1994 statistically, it'd be dang hard to go against a team that averaged 61 points a game and gave up a total of 13 points. But I'm going to tell you, the 92 team was a great team. The 98 team was a great team. I mean, there was, honestly, about 10 different teams could make an honest case as to why they were the best that ever was. And I'm certainly not going to be the guy that bursts their bubble and say, oh, no, y'all were good, but y'all weren't as good as this team or this team. Because I'm telling you, there were some great football teams in it for a small school.
What's cool is I don't have any friends from Iola that don't care to see Iola win. Everybody, every year, wants to see Iola win. And when they win a state championship, we'll all be standing on the sideline when it happens.
I'm with you.
Last thing, obviously, behind us is a golf course. And so you've obviously been retired for a while, and I've kind of picked at you about, what, did you go back to coaching? Did they ever ask you to come out of coaching? But your years in retirement, you're just enjoying life and you watching any sports?
Nobody ever loved it like I loved it. I don't think anybody could have had a more successful career, could have had more fun doing it. It was the thing that I wanted to do and that I got to do for 40 years, but I walked away at the right time. We'd gone back-to-back semifinals. When I go back up there now, everybody wants to talk about the great times, the great teams, how that we just almost won it in 2005 and almost won it in 2006. And that was my last 2 years, and all those teams we had in the 90s, and it's just very, very positive. And I've seen so many of my friends, they stayed in it too long. You know, they went when they left, everybody was ready for them to leave, you know. And I did not want that. That's very hurtful for a coach to have a great career and then end up with 2 or 3 really pitiful teams. And people don't remember that. The great ones, you know, they remember how it ended up. And when we ended up after 40 years with those back-to-back semifinal teams, I knew that was the time to walk away. And I've never really had any regrets about it. I've really, James, I've lived a charmed life. So many good things have happened to me and my family, and we've just been very blessed. I'm perfectly content with where I am right now.
So I'll end it on this, and Coach has heard me say this a little bit before. Your legacy through players lives on through many coaches, because we feel like those that played for you and those that still coach and those that parent, we all feel like that we have mentors in our life. We have people that have pushed us and pointed us in the right direction. But I can guarantee you that almost every single one of us can agree that you're one of the biggest mentors that we've ever had, and that we coach the way you coach. We have a good demeanor when we're on the ball field. We're not screaming and cussing at kids. We have the mindset of we're changing hearts, not just making football players and baseball players and basketball players. Our mindset is that we laugh, we cut up with the players, we discipline when discipline needs to be made. We want to win, but we're not going to do it in every effort where a kid's going to get hurt and things of those natures. And so on behalf of all the players, I'm speaking on behalf of all the players out there that have played for you over the years, Coach. We absolutely love you, we adore you, and we thank you for being there for us as our coach.
That just makes me feel so good, James. That makes it all worthwhile.
Thank you, Coach.
What you do is your business, and what I do is mine. Let's try to leave those dirty days behind.